What's going on, folks? Today I'm at the annual Spring Real Estate Summit that ULI puts on, and this time it's in Ann Arbor. And really a big fan of these types of events because it gives me, a developer with a non-traditional background in commercial real estate, an opportunity to interact with a number of professionals such as architects, GCs, brokers, so many different professionals within this realm that I have access to via these types of events. And so I definitely recommend, if you are in a scenario where you don't have a traditional real estate background, you look at certain entities like a ULI to engage with and connect yourself with, to basically indulge yourself and engulf yourself to the inner workings of commercial real estate. And I am once again telling you that if you don't have a traditional background in development, a traditional background in commercial real estate, you have the ability to learn from others in order to how to be successful in this space. There are a number of different resources that we have access to, like a ULI. There are ULI branches all throughout the country. So really make sure that if you're not in Michigan, look at ULI and see if there are opportunities for you to take part in some of their events in order for you to really engage with real estate professionals in a more direct way. And so I really recommend you putting that effort into figuring out ways to, get into these rooms, get into these events and these conferences, to interact with other professionals so you can build yourself up and get a little bit more comfortable, in this space.
You have to begin everything with people, because economic development, real estate development, none of it matters if you don't have people at the center. Place, and we're going to talk obviously much in detail about the place, is we have to have places where people want to live, people want to socialize, people want to hang out. And it's not just, obviously everyone is focused on the young men and women who are graduating from Ross and Broad and every other business school, every other school here in Michigan, but it's the young in spirit like me, who, as we think about how do we want to spend the next 20 or 30 years, I believe that Michigan has an opportunity to win for those who are young in spirit but not chronologically young. And so we can talk about some of the things and what must be true to that. The projects, and we're not going to talk about some of the projects you may read in the paper, but one thing I think is important for people to understand is, for every project like District Detroit that you might read in the press, or Our Next Energy, or Ford, or GM, or any of those large deals, they are only 5% of what we do. A lot of what we do are projects and communities on both peninsulas that are really focused on place, really focused on helping companies, add 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs. Now, obviously, we're seeking the large-scale jobs, and we can talk about the whys of that. So that's kind of a quick overview. But Kevin, I want to get back to something that you talked about, was Detroit pre-pandemic and now post. Developing the momentum, focus on neighborhoods, focus on small business. Talk about sort of the what must be truths at a high level as these developers here, as a small businessman, businesswoman comes to them looking for a lease, or maybe looking to invest in one of their properties. They need a little help on the capital stack, things of that nature. Talk about what must be truths as you and your team think about providing assistance or guidance and things of that nature.
Well, I'll say this. There were kind of two scary moments for me and my team when we got kind of into coming out of the pandemic. One was, and I think everyone in this room will appreciate this, what are we going to do with all this damn office space? The second one was, how are we going to create some structure with the support of the state, support of the MEDC? How are we going to create some structure around helping small businesses survive? Those are two kind of, I think we got one of those questions go like, what keeps you up at night? Kind of. That's what kept me up at night. And I didn't have a solid answer initially. And I kind of, in some phases of this, I still really don't. But so what must be true was, one, if we didn't create some new tools, and we're using tools now that didn't exist prior to the pandemic. You are too. We didn't have an influx of cash coming from the state or the federal government to help stabilize small businesses. That's a new tool, right? There was no ARPA funding, kind of a thing. There was no PPP loans. All that stuff was being created, as you know, as this thing was kind of flowing and going. And so what I would tell you is the fact that the state, MEDC, and the federal government recognize that without their support, the economy that we're kind of into now wouldn't be the economy that we're into now, which is a testament to the faith that this state has in our economy. Because this was a huge bet that if we did this, and there's a high likelihood we can help these small businesses survive. And then, quite frankly, now we are seeing small businesses begin to thrive, and that is kind of the space that we want to occupy, Quentin. The fact that now we're seeing offices being converted to residential uses, and one question I have for you, we'll get to in a second, is this whole concept, or not concept, this whole notion around population loss. We probably have to talk about that. I think that's the elephant in the room kind of thing. But all these assets were being pre-positioned to address all of that. And our role was to help get those activities in the development community in a posture that they felt comfortable enough that they could do the kind of mixed use that we were requiring at the city level. We were requiring mixed use because in Detroit, we didn't see a whole lot of national retailers coming into downtown. Now, as soon as I say that, a Gucci store opens. Right? I mean, and anytime, here's my secret sauce when I know a community is doing well. If you drive down Main Street and you see a Lululemon, you know that things are turning. And then the Gucci store was kind of the top off of it all. So I would say, Quentin, to your question, those two things, those two scary moments was, what do we do with this office space that was under construction? I'm not talking about that. You can deal with what's already constructed, but we had Hudson Block that was still under construction. We had major office spaces that were being converted under construction, and all of it kind of stopped. And I didn't know what we were going to do next.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because sometimes when you have what I would call entrepreneurial developers, they see all that. They are dealing with the same shocks that we're all dealing with. You know, what do you do with office space? I mean, you know, if you even expand out of Detroit, look at a place like Southfield, for example.
Exactly.
You know, you can look at other communities across the state. You know, Southfield I'll mention because literally I had on the island a conversation with their leadership about some of those things.
Converting the Plant Moran building into a storage facility. Office to storage.
Wow.
That's
So, but you raise a point, and I'm gonna put a pin in the population. We may come to that, but I want to talk about the developers in the room who haven't interacted with the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. He or she started a project. The pandemic happens. Supply shocks, cost of the fixtures, everything, labor, you name it, changes. The numbers don't quite pencil. Somehow they get your number. Somehow they find you. What are the three things that they probably should have when they first, you know, or at least a conception of, or at least have access to, or when they walk in? Because what the most painful thing, actually one of the things that keeps me up at night, a lot of things keep me up at night, I don't sleep very well in this role, believe it or not, is I don't like disappointing people.
Yeah.
I don't like, I mean, sometimes you have to disappoint your friends.
You don't want to be a dream killer.
You don't, right. You don't want to be a dream killer. You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But there are times when people will come and expect, and let me ask you a simple question, then this will set up what I'm about to say. How many of you want to pay more in taxes? If you would like to pay more in taxes, please raise your hand. If you want to pay, well, typically when I ask that question, I get, at most I've ever seen 30%, and that was in New Orleans. And that's only after I said it will be dedicated for public safety and infrastructure. The reason I ask that is when people come to MEDC, it's typically, hey, I've got this project, we need the state support. I literally, every time somebody wants to meet with me, that typically is the request. Somebody wants money. And they want your money, your tax dollars. It's not like we're creating money out of thin air. It comes from your tax dollars. And the reason I frame that way is because we have to be stewards of your tax dollars, there are certain things that have to be in order. And I think one of the things that, and I want you to give the audience members sort of the three things they should have in mind. The one thing that's very difficult for MEDC, I can't speak to the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, is it's very difficult for MEDC to be first in money. If you're coming to MEDC or the government or any government and you want the government to be first in money, then think about your friends and neighbors. Just our unscientific poll, how many people they want to pay more in taxes, because there's a certain element of risk. And so government is best bridged to completion. You know, 70, 80, 90% of your capital stack is done, and you're looking for that bridge to completion with, at least in our case at the state, demonstrated local support. It's very difficult for us to be more excited about something in Detroit than you are, right? Because somebody gonna come to me, and first thing I'm gonna do, Kevin, what you know about it? Yeah. I mean, should we be thinking about this? So, what are the three? I just phrase that to try to. This is a very sophisticated group, but for those who may be listening, or you may have a friend who's like, "Yo, I'm just gonna go get that bag." The government is a tough bag to get.
Really?
Because you want it to be tough, because it's your money. So talk about the three things, or four things, or however many things that have to be true before you get DECG support.
Well, I'll tell you, The thing that we look for now, there may be, is there any DEGC alumni in here? Hey! So anyway, there are, for our team, I like to see, and they like to see, a recognizable performer. Something that we can recognize. I'm not talking about smoke and mirrors. A lot of times, we see what I call smoke and mirror performance. Makes no sense. So we spend an inordinate amount of time helping you validate your numbers, number one. Two, we want to see your money, to Quentin's point. I don't care how much it is, but just let me see your money. I'm not talking about Huntington Bank's money. I'm not talking about, Bank of America's money. We like to see your money. However much money that is. And third, we do want to see a capital stack that somehow makes sense. Now, I will tell you, doing business in Detroit is not the easiest place to do business. I have a friend, Sonia May. Some of you all may know Sonia. And at the policy conference, the mayor was giving his speech about split tax. Don't ask me about split tax. Don't ask me. It's I used to understand it, but as it got a little bit more deep, I don't know if I understand it as much as I thought I did. Net, the tax structure in Detroit is not favorable sometimes for development. Not sometimes, a lot, more than a lot. Where I'm going with that is, Sonia, the mayor showed development that Sonia Mays put together. It worked, but she had 15 sources of funds to do that deal. 15. I've seen capital stacks in the 20s. That's how difficult it can be. So when we go to Quentin and ask him, okay, Quentin, I need another 10 to close this gap up, and we showed Quentin's team the stack, it's almost sometimes unrecognizable for MEDC to make sense out of it all. And so the complication of putting deals together in our city is just that. It can be complicated. Unfortunately, when I lived in Atlanta, before I moved here, I didn't see stacks like that. I saw, maybe 3. 2 banks, my great uncle, Leroy, who had some stuff that he did, he threw in with me, and we're gonna put together the senior housing deals. That maybe 4, not 15. And so as you say what we look at, number one, we try to validate your performance. 2, we want to see your money. And 3, we want to see if your capital stack is even achievable. Because usually what people do, they'll count Quentin's money into it before they even get the money from Quentin. They do it a lot. We think we're going to get some RAP funding. We think we're going to get this kind of funding. So they throw it as a cap stack. And Quentin and the MEDC don't know nothing about it yet. So then they employ us to go and help them get that money. Right? We're okay with it, but that takes a lot of time. And the market doesn't move as fast as this process. The market moves faster. This process is very arduous and grindy and ugly. And sometimes it just don't work. And so that's where we end up with. That's what we want to see.
No, that makes sense. I mean, you alluded to a couple of things. Is that we at MEDC, so Kevin focused on what's happening in Detroit. Well, extrapolate that across both peninsulas. You've got developers and folks interested in Marquette, Grand Rapids, Flint, Saginaw, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor. You just pick any place, and I just talked about cities, but rural areas. And we know that, or semi-rural areas, that across this state, there is a need for workforce housing. There's a need to revitalize downtowns, civic squares. We have, because of the automobile, there are certain suburbs that don't have a formal downtown. So we've changed and provided greater flexibility for our programming to try to respond to that. But having said all that, it's your money. You only want to give government so much of it. So imagine the demands on that. You know, there are people who are saying, okay, you know, Kevin may see, I'm not going to just throw out a number. You probably see 50 to 100 deals a year.
Yeah.
And it's not like everybody, all those deals are saying we're going to get $5,000 from MEDC. A lot of times they say they're going to get $5 million, $10 million from the state. So extrapolate that across the state. And obviously we can't satisfy all those. So that's why I was saying in the beginning, as you think about, you know, I don't like to disappoint people, but I think sometimes people feel like, oh, District Detroit received X, Y, and Z, so therefore I should receive the same percentage. But
you know, Quentin, and this is interesting, and I promise you, they think Quentin Messer and Kevin Johnson have a safe up in the Guardian building, and that you're building in Lansing, and in that safe contains $1 billion. And all we do is I go and have a combination to the safe, and I pull that whatever amount of money y'all think I'm supposed to give you, and I just go hand it to Chris Illich. You know, so this is a performance-based situation, right? Deferred taxes and tax abatements and those kinds of things are performance-based, and so educating the masses is a very challenging part of the job that we have to do, because to Quentin's point, these are tax dollars that we are leveraging to leverage new investment and opportunity. And I don't know, Quentin, as we continue to kind of deal with how we're utilizing the state's tools and our tools, how much longer we'll be able to get away with just, it's a continuous education process. And you guys need to help us with this, by the way. Because I know some of you, most of you know how difficult putting together deals are. And so as much as you come to us to help utilize the tools that we have, you in fact have a responsibility. So this is my clarion call for help, to educate those that are around you. Because if we're not doing what we need to do to support you, your deals won't get across the finish line. And a lot of times deals are stopped in their tracks because the community does not understand the net benefit of the investment.
no, I double click on that, and I always say that, you know, I have to be better about educating folks, but the reality of it is that markets are global, capital is mobile, and capital is only responsible to go to where it can be replicated, and replicated quickly. And I think sometimes people feel like, oh, this developer, you know, they have a nice car, they got a nice watch, therefore they should just invest in Detroit or Ann Arbor or Flint or wherever. No. That developer needs to go to where he or she can find the greatest rate of return for their investors. I mean,
that's fair.
That's fair.
That's fair. I want a return on your investment.
That's right. But I think that there is, but at the same point, there is a legacy of exclusion from opportunity that that we're dealing with that justifiably makes people frustrated. You know?
Yeah.
And so that's why, you know, one of the things we're trying to do, and we have an emerging developer program. We're trying to, as best as we possible. My objective is to try to be as transparent about the what must be true. Because if you are a sophisticated investor like a lot of you, how many of you have retained consultants to help you secure tax abatements or tax mitigation?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is a sophisticated group. Not only sophisticated,
Yeah.
they got some cash.
Yeah, they got cash.
They got money to pay somebody to help them get more money. I mean, it is what it is. So what we're trying to do is democratize as much as we possibly can. The first time that someone goes through this. And it's challenging because nor Kevin nor I have that safe that people think we do. Even if we did, do you think they would let two brothers have the keys to a safe with money like that?
Not in this lifetime.
No, I'm just joking. But we have a black treasurer, so there you go. State of.
And he's tougher than we are.
Dude, yeah. Well, yeah, but we got, I mean, if you ever dealt with Treasurer Rachel Eubanks, she's no joke. But the point is, and a serious point, is that the same rules apply, but the playbook is more transparent for those who have consultants or been through the process before. So we're trying to make the playbook more transparent, more understandable. And a crucial part of that is having the local support. So go ahead, Kevin.
Well, it's something that we have to kind of demystify.
Yeah.
And that's where we've asked for your help and the consultants that you hired. It's not just about going out and extracting resources to help your deals get across the finish line. It is to make sure that those who have influence, and a lot of deals that you all have are in really recognizable, high value neighborhoods. And because of that, the community, particularly in Detroit, there's going to be someone's going to be held to account. You're just not going to. That's just not how it works in Detroit. That's not how it works in the state of Michigan. You're going to be held to account to do what you said you're going to do, have the benefit that you said you're going to have, and deliver that in a way that reflects the physical expectation that the community wants. That's where it is. Quentin, let me ask you a question. In terms of ARPA funding,
Yeah.
that the state received and that a lot of communities received, how much of a game changer was that in terms of the distribution of those ARPA funding to help communities kind of survive this whole thing?
I mean, it was huge. I mean, so the state of Michigan received, I'm looking because I want to make sure I get the numbers right, $1.93 billion went to the state's 83 counties. And allocations were based upon population. So Wayne County got $339 million, Oakland County got $244 million, and Macomb got $169 million. In addition, $1.8 billion was allocated to 49 specific cities and townships in the state. And within that, MEDC with the state, a lot of partnership with our local and regional economic development partners, we created a revitalization and placemaking program, the RAP program. RAP 1.0, now we're doing RAP 2.0. So we were able to deploy $100 billion in gap financing for placemaking, rehabilitation. Now, mind you, we received close to $500 million, Brittany, in requests for that 100 million. And I would say of that 500 million, that's round numbers, there were an additional 150 and 200 million that were worthy of rewards. So that's why RAP 2.0 came into existence. And the last thing I would say, and I think this is, I shouldn't say it, but it's just on my spirit to say it. Government is a learning institution. And we do learn and try to get better. So we change things based upon feedback from RAP 1.0. But also, we, the voting public, we, the people who fund government, are somewhat unforgiving about government learning. So it creates this tension.
Yes.
That, you talked about operating at the speed of business. We have a bunch of entrepreneurs, real estate development is inherently risky. And there's a lot of rapid prototype. You think you're gonna have this type of capital stack, you don't, this person falls out, this bank doesn't wanna act right, you're gonna go somewhere else, blah, blah, blah. So you always have to adjust. We in government are trying to, I think at MEDC and our partners at MISHDA and other parts of government, but it's challenging because there are things statutorily otherwise that don't necessarily want government to make a lot of changes. Because you, the taxpayer, get kind of like, well, why are they changing something? What's up? Is it politics? Is it so these are the realities that we deal with. I want to talk, I'll answer, because we put a pin in the population.
Yes.
And then I want you to have last word before we go Q&A. So, on the population piece, because I think it's directly relevant to real estate development. Real estate and growth in real estate is really a function of growth of people. I mean, it's just that simple. You know it all the time. I mean, you measure foot traffic, you do a lot of different things that are based upon the number of people who are going. And anything from, restaurant concepts to, Lululemons to hospitals to whatever. Michigan has grown relatively, but it has grown, but not to the pace to keep up with peers, and I say peers not only from a regional basis, but also a national and international basis. And this is something that when I was interviewed for this position by the MEDC Executive Committee to whom I report, as well as by the governor and other members of the administration, we talked about population. That was, over 2 years ago. I think now there's a certain space where we now can put the elements together. And so that's why, as you look at the launch of the Michigan Population Growth Council that's going to be led in a bipartisan fashion, population is really that fourth P behind people, place, and projects. Because when we continue to get the projects, the places, retain the people who are coming through Michigan and other institutions, the population is going to be there. And I do think that we will have certain advantages. Weather is going to be one of them. I also think we need to have a better relationship with weather. I've said this publicly. It was in the Detroit news today. It wasn't the context in which I said it, but I did say it, and I've said it publicly. I'm a native Floridian. You're a native South Carolinian. You moved from Atlanta. I moved from New Orleans. We know something about humility and humility too. And I don't know whether you got it, but it bedeviled me that people would ask me, how are you dealing with the weather? Are you okay? Isn't the weather terrible? I like to think of myself as a rational person. I chose to come here. And you're making me feel like maybe I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I think that we need to really begin to have a different mindset. That doesn't mean that you walk away from your challenges. And my father said something before he passed. He would always say, you have to be relentlessly objective about those things that you love, but you got to be your own best cheerleader. And so I think that is basically what we're trying to do with this Michigan Population Council. Will a council in and of itself solve our population? No, but it will intentionally organize our thinking, which will hopefully make it easier that we have, without increasing anyone's additional incremental tax burden, more tax dollars to potentially act as bridge closing catalysts for investments that are going to transform communities. So I mean, work to be done, certainly, but I just wanted to kind of, I didn't want to end without, at least my portion, without mentioning about population. I'll let you have the last word.
Well, all I'll say is this. I believe what I see. And what I see is, in Detroit, I see a tremendous amount of apartments, condos, both for sale and for lease. That's what I see. I see a friend of mine, Chris Jackson, who did a development on Woodward. And when the day we did the ribbon cutting, it was 175 units or so. They did the ribbon cutting, it was 80% lease. Now, for me, and I think all of you who do multifamily developments, if you clip the ribbon on your facility and it's 80% lease, you'll take that all day long. And so the question was, well, where do people come from? Where are they coming from? Are they all leaving Birmingham? Are they all leaving Southfield? Where are these people coming from? There is a demand for urban living, and the dollars are trailing the investment. That's all I know. Retailers follow rooftops, and people follow opportunities. The more opportunities Quentin and I and those of us who are in the economic development business can provide will lead to people following those opportunities. Particularly, and this is where we get stuck sometimes, the opportunities that we're trying to attract have to be of such that it is a sustainable career path for those that are leaving this place and other places like this to come to. If the quality of the opportunities that we are trying to bring into our state aren't worthy, then the kids won't come. That's it, point blank period. So I'm not so sure about the battle that the mayor's having with the Census Bureau. He said some very provocative things about the Census Bureau. But I will tell you that I believe what I see. What I see is mass amounts of developments that are trying to get off the ground, and they have a multi-family, residential component to it, and they're doing that for a reason. And I don't think it's that speculative, in my opinion.